See, we wait for Jess to really get into it before we hit the go button. Sneak attack, everybody. Hey, it's another episode of Guest Quest, the tabletop community interview show brought to you by the Gimme the Loot podcast, the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition actual play podcast that probably shouldn't peaked on its interview guests in January because there's like a whole another 11 months, but screw it. We'll figure it out. And not to give anybody who's coming on in February a hard time, but you got a big act to follow. So joining us tonight is B. Dave Walters. Mr. Walters is, of course, a storyteller and proud scoundrel American. He's known as the writer and co-creator of Electropunk, Dungeons and Dragons: A Darkened Wish for IDW Comics, and the matching streaming show for Wizard of the Coast, DM of Idle Champions Presents for CNEG Games. He plays Baron Victor Temple on Vampire the Masquerade, LA by Night. He played freely on Heroes of the Plains and Marcid the Typhoon. Marcid the Typhoon on Pirates of Leviathan for Dimension 20. He's also the DM for the Black Dice Society, which is a horror RPG in the Ravenloft setting, lead developer for the Motherlands RPG, and of course, the DM for Invitation to Party for G4 TV. Mr. Walters, thank you for joining us, sir.
The dozens and dozens of the Rocks fans are losing their mind right now. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And joining me tonight for another guest that has a resume that could take up the entire stream, just going through it, to talk a little bit about D&D and what he's doing are
Jamie. I play Eldrin Thaneros on the Gimme the Loot podcast, and I'm not even going to try to follow up that resume with my own accomplishments because they will never come close.
And I am Jazz. I play Fate on the Gimme the Loot cast, and I am also now intimidated by the magnitude of the man we are interviewing today.
And I am Anthony, who plays Bobo on the Gimme the Loot podcast, and my resume would take the next hour and a half, so we'll get on to the interview.
It is impressive. Let's not knock it out.
Thank you for your humility. That is exceeded only by your presence. Yes.
He's mostly basing that off of times he's had to save the party's ass as the barbarian in tank. So I don't know if individual saving throws count for that. So a lot of times we'll attack this from, hey, how did you get started in TTRPGs? But I think you've talked a lot about that, and because you've got there's really incredible projects going on. I'd like to kind of flip the timeline here a little bit and start with the most recent and then work our way backwards, if that's cool with you, sir.
Yeah, whatever.
Starting with Invitation to Party on G4.
Hey.
That is, of course, the first actual televised D&D show.
Yep.
Which congrats on that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Like I tell everybody, there's not a lot of firsts left in this world, so the fact that we get to be the first ones to do this is very, very nice. The first TTRPG, first actual play. Yep. So
that streams Friday at 6 p.m. on YouTube and Twitch, and then gets rebroadcast on the actual cable channel.
Yeah, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific on G4, Twitch, and YouTube on Fridays, and then on cable on Mondays at 3/6. Although I've been told it airs like a lot on G4. Like you can catch it at all kinds of random times, but I know for sure 3 o'clock Pacific on Mondays. Yep.
So, and there's a little bit of a difference between the two. So the live streams have a little bit more audience participation, and the rebroadcast, that's all kind of locked in, obviously.
Yeah, edited for the linear, edited for time. Like we try to avoid saying things we're not supposed to say on the internet, although we still do it often. Things they go through and have to like sanitize that a little bit, and then and then throw it up. Yeah.
Just as good. So your the show takes place in a really cool set that's meant to be is it the rotted? I've got this. It's probably
the
a type
gut.
Okay, because I typed in the rotted guy on my sheet, and I'm like, that's a whole other different show.
No, that's what they leave behind is rotted guys. The set is the rotted gut, which is supposed to be like a medieval tavern, but really it's kind of more like a Chili's. Like,
it comes across very D&D sports bar.
I sort of walked onto the set and they were like, and I was like, okay.
Little bit more. It's a cool. I thought that's what you guys were going for. I was like, oh, cool.
I mean,
man,
it's what somebody was going for. Yeah. So there we are. It's not that.
They had a lot of neon left over from the last time G4 was a thing. So they're like, hey, look, we gotta, this is a tax write-off if we reuse it. But it is a cool set. Like one of the things I think that strikes you when you first jump in and watch it is how much space there is for you guys to operate on. And I know obviously what the camera shoots and then versus what you're actually in, there's always a little bit of a difference, but that space looks huge for you have to kind of.
Well, it kind of had to accommodate for me because I'm freaky gigantic. I'm 6'9", 280, which is 2.05 meters and like 125 kilos from my European friends there. Yeah, so it's for it to still look spacious with me in it gives you an idea. Yeah, it's a pretty chunky space. Yeah.
But how many stone is my question? How many stone if you convert that to
let's
English?
see, stone is roughly 20 pounds.
Oh god, he actually knows the conversion.
Yeah,
crap. He called me on my shit. He called me on my shit. Back away.
What's that? 100 like 110 stone, I think. I'm bad at math.
No. I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
Right.
I'm sorry, Jez.
It is roughly 20 pounds to a stone, though. That is true. Sorry.
So I was just wondering, like, as a person who gets to walk this plane of existence as an actual giant, and then role play with people who tend to enjoy slaying pretend giants, like how does that was the juxtaposition? How does that work in your life?
I'm an advocate of the scientific method of F around and find out, like I realize there's lots of people that think they got it, that we're in the same room together. And then they're like, do I got it? And I'm like, I don't know, dude. I don't know. Maybe we're both about to find out. Let's see. Yeah. Right. So, yeah. Yeah. Although so I was a bodyguard for a long time. That's why I came out here. And big dudes aren't what would worry me, because every big dude thinks he's a world beater. I mean, just like some big old jiggly guy comes in and he's like, I'm 350, I must be cool. And I'm like, okay. No, the problem is a little dude. I'm not worried about a 300-pound guy who thinks he's tough. I'm worried about a 150-pound guy who thinks he's tough, because he either is or is insane or both. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I briefly worked for a telemarketing place that was all New Jersey guys, and any of them that came in under 5'5" were the ones you had to watch out for when you went out and got drinks, because that was the guy that was going to go downtown in Austin and try and pick a fight with every random cowboy. And it's like, no, dude, no, we don't do that. That's a bad idea. That's a bad
maybe
idea.
Don't. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's not
take a shot. Yeah, right.
Exactly. On a long enough timeline in Texas, absolutely. So speaking of the set, the circle. And that space that you operate in was that kind of part of the original set design? Because you guys get out from behind the desk and you kind of do some improv work in that middle space. Was that a byproduct of, oh shit, we got this big room, or the idea of, hey, we want to get out from behind the countertop?
When I joined the project, the only two things that were known is it was going to be an official D&D stream. WotC was involved, and that it was going to be heavily improv driven with the circle. Those were the only two data points. Everything else has come up after that, including how that was going to manifest, how we could make use of it. We're still finding new and different ways to make use of it, which I think is nice. I mean, for me, it sounds grandiose, but Critical Role made it possible for all of us to do what we do by proving people would watch this content on the internet. I mean, I was there at Geek and Sundry. I watched it happen. And we all sort of like rode that wake. So I'm really trying to push this to prove the thesis that people will watch it on TV, because then that opens the doors for everybody. And we've already been successful enough. It's going to be done again. So I'm just hoping more and more people get to capitalize in bigger and bigger ways.
Yeah, it is what you guys are doing, because obviously Critical Role is the kind of the one that is everybody else is measured up to with the success they've had with their Kickstarter and their animated Amazon program that's out right now and all their source books. But what you guys are, I and not to throw any shade at them, I can't watch it. Like it is something that I just can't find the trail of. And so when I went to watch your show, I was like, all right, let's go check out B-Dave's show. Let's really kind of dig into it. I was like, oh shit, this is engaging. Like the act of you kind of getting up and moving around just makes it seem more dynamic and draws you in a little bit. And it does make a huge difference.
First of all, I'm going to refer to that show as Amazated from now on, like exclusively. Like I worked on that show. I consulted on that show. I'm going to refer to it as Amazated in official documentation going forward. Yeah, it's our goal. And my number one favorite comment that I get is people saying, I've never played D&D. I've never watched this content, but I like it. And now I want to give it a try. You know what I mean? Either being like, ooh, I kind of like this content. Ooh, I kind of want to actually play this game. That was the intent.
Yeah.
I wanted to leave enough there for the OGs, which usually comes in the form of I'll mention people or places or something that I know the people that are about that life know what I'm talking about. And the new people have no idea. But I'm like, that's something I did for you guys. For everybody else, I'm like, this is where we're going type thing. And so I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible for the largest number of people but the biggest challenge in this space, in the streaming space, then the problem that literally everybody's trying to answer is you have two competing needs that must be met. You have to create enough content to allow a community to form, to allow a fan base to form and have some evangelists, but not so much that it becomes unwieldy for the new person to join in. And where those lines intersect is slippery at best. And different people have different answers. So, accessibility plus depth is the name of the game. So what we're trying to do. You
gotta have the on-ramps for sure. How big is that studio audience? I mean, you've obviously streamed a ton. Is this the most you've performed in front of people for D&D, performed D&D in front of people before, I should say?
Me personally?
Yes.
I think the biggest
live, I should say, live. Yeah. Live crowd.
Well, before Omicron in the studio there at G4, we had like 20-30 people. Me personally, I think the largest crowd I've played D&D in particular was in front of was a stream of Many Eyes 2019, when I played with Mercer, Debran Wall, Mika Burton, Anna Prosser, and Chris Perkins was our DM. Wow. I feel like, and Jim Zub. It was Jim Zub's birthday. Yeah. I'm forgetting somebody. The birthday boy. I think that crowd, that was the biggest crowd I'd ever been in front of there.
Is so one thing that I want to get out there too is, when are we getting the B Dave line of leisure wear for the fashionable DM? That jacket that is incredible, and I'm jealous of it. The entire. Please tell me the official B Dave fashion line's coming.
That whole ensemble. Hey, Mr. Albert, a friend of our clan there. I usually don't read chat. It's funny because I'm black and it's the internet. So, but in this instance, I'm like, yeah, hey, how you guys doing? All those pieces are from the Shrine LA. It's a place in downtown LA, and they got a website. So if you Google the Shrine LA, it's anything you see me flexing. I will tell you, it is all very expensive, but it's very well made.
Oh yeah. Now I don't think I can pull 90% of that stuff off for a second, but I will try at least one piece at some point. So
here's the thing. I've been, especially with all the vampire stuff I've done, I've been to multiple places here where people were wearing that non-ironically. Like, no, they were like, no, this is the lifestyle. I'm like, all right. Personally, one of my favorite things to do is after we're done filming is go out and I don't change clothes. Right. I just roll in and watch everybody be like, and I'm like, yeah. I will tell you, it does go down slightly differently in LA here, though, because you can kind of do whatever you want, because no matter how ridiculous you look, people will think you're just leaving set. Like I've had full creature makeup and just bopping to the grocery store, and people are just like, yeah, all right. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like,
makes sense.
Generally, we've got a little bit of that in Austin. We're 80% in Austin. Anthony's up in Dallas, and Jamie, whose name I just totally forgot for a second, is in Chicago. But in Austin, there's a pretty just shrug mentality, like tech bros, and they just pretty much shrug it off.
I definitely went to the barbershop and saw a man getting his fade done. And he was wearing like full on like zombie and or vampire like themed contacts. So like his pupils were like completely dilated out from the contacts. And I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
so,
checks out. Checks out.
Seems legit. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
In a post-COVID work from home world, I mean, what is acceptable attire anymore?
Right.
I have forgotten that I wouldn't wear slippers into every establishment until about a month ago. So, this show, Critical Role's cartoon, NADPOD, I discovered this week, is actually headlining, not participating, but headlining the Moon Tower Comedy Festival down here. There's a new D&D movie on the horizon. D&D keeps kind of branching out into just more and more other types of media and into a broader range.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you, is that part of that on-ramping? How sustainable do you think that is long term, or where is the kind of next path for it, do you think?
Well, I'm gonna trace it through a couple of things because I'm way, way, way older than I look, and I survived. I lived through the Satanic Panic when these type of games just weren't. Just wasn't that it wasn't cool; it's that it was actually dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think that is what buoyed the hobby for so long, because people started doing it because our parents told us not to. Like otherwise, I think D&D would have been just like Monopoly. Like, I mean, we've all got a Monopoly set, but there's not a Monopoly fandom where you're like, ooh, Monopoly. And then it kind of went underground, and it was the things that like the geeks did and stuff that you just sort of did and didn't really talk about. But I think the big breakthrough, honestly, was the MCU. It was Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
Because Iron Man came out and people were like, oh, wait a second. It's okay for me to admit I love this stuff. Like can I love Captain America also? And Spider-Man? Word? What about video games? You're all playing video games too? Yeah. And we just see this renaissance in the last like 10 or 15 years where it was okay to be a geek. And then those of us that were doing this thing the entire time were like, can we also interest you in the chance cubes? and it's just blossomed, because the two things I hear so much are either people were playing the whole time and just didn't know, or always wanted to and didn't know how, because there wasn't an internet. And it wasn't the type of thing that when you were just in the corner of the library and the cheerleading team walked by, you were like, hey, girls, pull up a chair. Although in retrospect, a lot of them actually wanted to try it. And so did the football team. And so did everyone else. And here we are.
Yeah, I'm of a similar age where I went through the explosion and retraction, and then we don't talk about that. Put the dice away when people are coming over. And it is really intriguing. And I think the amount of content creation that's out there right now is what, and then you have Stranger Things, you've got a lot of other access points to it. So I want to shift off a D&D just for 1 second to talk about Dear America from a Black Guy. Can you just give everybody a quick synopsis of what that is if they're not familiar with it real quick?
It is a documentary that I'm working on that I crowdfunded a little while back. I know this is going to become as a complete and total shock that it has proven to be very difficult to make a movie by myself during a pandemic. So I'm chopping away at it. Yeah. The idea was basically, we've got to get back to a point where we can just talk to each other just from a place of respect, of just accepting our own basic humanity. Because we're so far away from that, just with our us versus them mentality. And I just want to be able to foster a conversation where you're a person and I'm a person. We may never agree on anything else, but we're human beings. Can we just start there? Like, you probably got a family that you love. I got a family I love. Like, we all kind of want the future to be better, even if we completely disagree on what better looks like. Can we just start with some of this stuff? I will tell you, because unfortunately, just standing across the opposite ends, just yelling at each other is literally getting people killed right now. Yeah. The challenge with that, though, I'm not gonna lie, I come and go with, there's times that I'm like, but I don't want to talk to them. No, I must. I must do this. Like, This is your burden, Frodo Baggins. Yeah. So that's basically what attempting to foster some form of at least basic civil dialogue, more or less.
And pandemic is what's kind of working against you right now. I think the last update when I was looking at the Indiegogo said you guys were even having trouble getting like the camera equipment on it. I think was the last update on it,
Yep.
which the supply chain is working. So that is still, any idea when that's kind of coming out in the long term or?
Here's my other issue. What it's about has changed 3 times at the election, at the insurrection, at I'm all like, oh, the story's going this way now. And then I'm like, wait, it's going back this way. Like I keep joking that I think I'm going to look visibly different in age at different points in the story where I'm just like, beard's like, it's like Homer Simpson. My muscles kind of come up and go down over the course of it, Yeah.
It's like Boyhood. It can be your Boyhood, except, with a slightly more serious topic. But
exactly,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Just I'm not sure if the question is meant as a joke or not, but I feel like it's kind of an interesting question. Mr. Bible Pants asked in the chat, does role play help in any way whenever you find yourself trying to have that conversation with those people?
Yes, in the sense that I have to be able to put myself in a completely different perspective at the drop of a hat. Then I'm all like, this is your thing and what you're about. Like if any of you saw Friday's episode of Invitation to Party, we had Freddie Prinze Jr. on, which was dope. But they met the Xanathar, and I got to be the almighty Xanathar, which was a lot of fun. But Xanathar sees things a lot different than everybody else, and I had to be there. It's just so. Right. In that, yes, it does help. It actually helps a lot.
Cool.
The thing that grabbed me about it was hey, we can't just let this be a media burst and then get burnered and not followed up. Like this is something that we've got to continue to push to the front of the conversation and keep talking about it. Cause otherwise it'll, okay, we paid attention to that for 5 minutes and then it faded away.
I mean, those black squares on Instagram already, that was a minute ago, and already they're like, ooh, wokeness is going to cost us elections. We got to stop. And I'm like, okay, all right. So.
Right.
We'll see.
Maybe just, not actually following through on any of the promises for your constituents. Cost you an election.
Yeah. As one does. Yep.
So switching back to D&D real quick with the Black Dice Society. Is still ongoing, correct?
Yes. We just did episode 2 of season 2 of our beloved Black Dice Society. I don't know if you can see the art. It's all shiny. I have a lot of lights on in this room, but I assure you it's gorgeous. Yeah.
So that's a Ravenloft setting. Tips, the difference between DMing and a primarily horror setting. We'll get into this because Vampire obviously is a horror adjacent-ish or straight up horror.
No, it's a storytelling game of personal horror. No, it's straight up horror. Yeah.
So DMing D&D for horror. Can you walk us through the kind of the different aspects of that, or different minds, or some tips for DMing horror? Because I think that's, obviously you're veering into a completely different genre than a lot of people picture when they see D&D.
Yeah. So it is wild that right now I run the official D&D horror story and the official D&D comedy show at the same time. They're not so dissimilar because comedy is tragedy plus time. I think I have to differentiate one thing though. Horror D&D and just telling a horror story in and of itself are not exactly the same, but because there's some things that D&D requires or it stops being D&D.
Right.
Even when we were going through the development of Invitation to Party, there was this big push for improv and everybody wanted to streamline. Even from WotC was one of the things. It's like, oh, you could do away with this, you could do away with that. And there was multiple times that I had to be like, yeah, but you can't though.
Right.
Because past a certain point, it's not D&D anymore. It's super happy fantasy improv hour. In Dungeons and Dragons, even in a Ravenloft story, it's the same thing. For the most part, horror is about tension. Comedy is about relieving tension. So it is almost taking a very similar journey. It's just where, if anywhere, you open that release valve. In the Black Dice Society, they're in a meat grinder, and they are always in a vice. And every once in a while, something will happen to just give them a moment to breathe. And now they've become increasingly wary of being lulled into a false sense of security because something terrible is going to happen, because it does, because that's that story. It is about survival against the odds, being outmatched, always kind of being on your heels. And every once in a while fighting back and winning, because that's D&D. At some point, they've got to beat the monster. They cannot lose every time. That's not this game. That's not why people play this game. That's some other games, not this one. With comedy, and what a lot of people don't necessarily realize is the human nervous system. You personally, no one can maintain a heightened emotional state for more than about 20 or 30 minutes. You cannot cry for more than 20 or 30 minutes. You can't laugh for 20 or 30 minutes. You can't stay angry for more than 20 or 30 minutes. You physiologically can't. Your emotions bottom out, and you just come down to numbness. So when you're telling a story, you have to wave it up and down. Even in a scary story, and you can watch this in horror movies, there's light moments, or moments that it seems like everything's going to be all right, and then that's when the axe comes through the wall. Same thing in a comedy. Usually something bad happens. It looks like all is lost. Everybody's so sad. You turn the door, and then here's this comedic thing, and everybody gets a good belly laugh out of it. The hardest part in a horror story is stopping people from using humor to relieve the tension, because that's what humor is for. But when your whole point of your story is maintaining that tension, you can't let it out. So those are the big differences, basically.
Cast, have any of y'all played in Ravenloft, or in earlier editions, or the current Ravenloft setting? Have any of you guys ever played that?
I have not. I've got a group of friends that I think we're looking at trying to run Strahd, but I haven't had experienced it with it myself.
Yeah, I haven't jumped into the 5e Ravenloft yet. Like 2e was kind of the wealth of my D&D experience before I jumped back into podcasting, jumped into it with podcasting and streaming, and the Domains of Dread and Dark Sun and like that whole big setting, and the difference between the two. I just haven't had the opportunity to dip into the 5e side yet.
You'll find a lot of the same vocabulary. A lot of those same domains exist, but different things have happened. They've changed over time. And that sort of thing. Although, also, Jamie, bro, I got to be able to get a word in edgewise, man. Okay, come on. Like, you're sucking up all the oxygen on this thing, man.
we explicitly bring him along for window dressing.
I'm just here to look pretty, and
there's a running thread too with our patrons and wanting Jamie to fold laundry in the background of the stream. So we're working on that as a patron.
I've been on the internet, man. There's a market for it. Somebody is gonna be there, just like, yeah, you fold that laundry. The laundry might be clean, but you're dirty, Jamie. Aren't you dirty folding that laundry? You know, just like sweating in a basement. Yeah.
And so now, for the record, we have audio of both B. Dave and Stashwick talking sexy about laundry, and I will loop those two together and put them out there sooner rather than later. So
I'm going to go ahead and speak on my friend Todd's behalf. Do it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, Vic, you played Victor on LA by Night. So that was its 5th season. Did you guys just wrap up the ongoing storyline with that? Is that coming back? What's going on with LA by Night?
LA by Night, that was the end of our story, but there's more stories to tell about Los Angeles and the kindred who dwell in our beloved city. Yep.
Are you going to be part of that second generation of it going forward, or is that something that I see. So, Vampire the Masquerade, guys, have any of y'all played any of the World of Darkness stuff at all?
Yeah, I played Vampire the Masquerade and Werewolf the Apocalypse.
Hey, important question here. What werewolf tribe?
I don't remember my werewolf tribe. That was a very long time ago, but I do remember I tend to lean Bruja on vampires. So. Yeah,
perfect. Yeah. Hey. Hey, zone of safety. I wasn't going to grief you. I'm just judging you internally.
What's the Nosferatu one? Because I think that's the one that I played. A couple of vampire games.
That's the bald ones with the kind of
old. monsters on the outside is what the Nosferatu are. Everybody else is a monster on the inside. Nos are monsters on the outside. They're the shadowy information brokers, all things being equal.
Yeah, those are the guys. And then we played Mage the Ascension a little bit, which I could not wrap my head. Ironically, I couldn't wrap my head around the paradox system, but that's a dice pool game, and I love the D20 system. Dice pool games have never really clicked for me with the way that they handle successes and the different mechanics between the two. Do you have a personal preference one way or the other? Or
Mage is the Matrix. That's the easiest way to remember how that game works. Anything that is true about the Matrix is true about Mage. So much so, the Wachowskis cannot convince me that they didn't play just tons of Mage when they were coming up before they wrote the Matrix.
That's true. It even has agents in it. Holy crap!
The agents are the technocracy.
Yeah,
like 1,000%. Yeah. They're basically like a Sons of Ether group fighting a bunch of agents, or virtual adepts too. They lend themselves to different kinds of stories. All things being equal, D&D is simple, but I don't particularly care for a pass-fail binary, except for a crit on a D20. If you miss by 1 or if you hit by 10, makes no difference. It is you either did a thing or you did not do a thing. Dice pool systems in the World of Dark, the storyteller system in particular from the World of Darkness, gives you the capacity for a range of outcomes, which I like. And then that is helps facilitate the story, especially because you can always tell the player, it's like, all right, you got 4 successes, which is 2 more than you needed. You tell me what happens, and then you're getting them involved in it. I mean, on occasion in D&D, I'll say things like, you tell me what it looks like when you defeat the creature, just for them to get flowery in their language. But for things like the storyteller system, it very much lends itself to that directly in a way that I like a lot.
Do you think D&D ever moves to that system with a D20 roll? I mean, we've got 5.5 on the horizon, and obviously there's been a lot of focus with Morden. Well, you think I can't talk when I said Amazated. Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse.
This whole thing. Is that what we're talking about?
Nice.
That collects all the character options and lineages and brings them up to the mechanics that Tasha uses. Do you think that's on the list of things for WotC to look at as they go into 5.5, or is it more, hey, let's revamp our system into a more generic version not generic, but more universal system to support alternate setting books? Because I know they've said the focus is on setting books going forward.
What I think the biggest problem they got over there is 4th edition deviated too far away from what made D&D, and it cost them a lot of people. I was a 4th edition refugee.
Yeah.
If 4th edition, and this is one of the very few times I'm going to say something slightly kind about 4th edition, and only slightly, is if they'd call that game D&D Tactics, it'd be out now.
Yeah,
like they'd still be putting out books and people would still be playing it. It was the fact that they tried to say this is what D&D is now, and a bunch of us were like, but it's not though. 5th edition is about the D&D-est D&D I've ever seen. You know, like it really does a good job at simulating what that game has become in a way that I don't see a clear path to do it very differently and more betterer. That's my thing. I'm like, I don't really know what you guys are going to do. So, or that is not going to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater type thing. I don't think they're going to go to a dice pool system or ever get away from the D20 because it's so endemic, you know, to this game. But I mean, they're going to do something. I don't know. It's but it's got to be rough though, because I mean, right now, again, you got the golden goose that's still laying, but the golden goose is almost 10 years old. So you're like, well, gotta upgrade them geesages. You know, so.
I mean, the answer is Spelljammer, right? Just re-release Spelljammer, you cowards, and then we'll all be okay. It's interesting because I mean, going back and we do our DMs planning episodes and trying to go and compare rule categories from 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th edition. There's always a record scratch whenever I go and try and compare what the rule set was in fourth edition to anything else, because my brain still hasn't been able to wrap around the presentation of the rules in that edition.
Here's what makes fourth edition make sense. If you realize they tried to make an MMO that you played pen and paper.
Oh yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It definitely looks like the WoW action bar from like Dwarf Tank in Iceground for sure.
Shout out to Arthas Menethil, the one true Lich King.
There you go. There you go. And I don't know if it was Mercer or somebody else who was saying, for the one thing that fourth did real well, and this again I think goes back to the D&D tactics comment that you made, is that it will move you through combat at a clip. That 5e can bog down in combat, but 4e can move through large groups of PCs through combat a little bit more elegantly than some of the other editions.
Was that Colville? Maybe
It sounds like something Colville would say. You know, I mean, it's true. Fifth edition can get crunch. You know, but I also think when you're running combat in fifth edition, you know, the DM has to know that this can go as fast or as slowly as I want it to.
Yeah.
You know, the reinforcements can show up. Creatures can flee for their lives. This was a particularly weak version of the beast and it's dead already. Or this is a particularly strong one with more hit points than you've encountered. A lot of times you deal with players who've been at it a long time and they have the stat block committed to memory. And they're like, that's not how this thing works. And it's like, it is now. You know? Your character's never seen an Umber Hulk with a 12-pack. Weird. Roll initiative.
That's a mental image that will not go away anytime soon. Umber Hulk with a 12-pack. Yikes.
That dude is shredded. Like Kylo Ren.
That is the most vascular illithid I've ever seen.
The very vascular illithid. Yeah.
So your lead designer
joke pinnacles.
Just
so strong, mind flayer. You're so strong.
Eight little barbells curling up and down.
Exactly.
I mean, look, there are no carbs in gray matter. They are straight up creatures by nature.
Yeah, man.
So, lead designer, Motherlands RPG. Can you tell everybody a little bit about what that project and what your role with that is?
Yeah, again, it's a Afro-futurist TTRPG that we crowdfunded for, which was very successful. This one I'm not doing by myself, but we're all still trying to do in the plague times. But it is coming along well. The premise of our story was, what would a world without colonialism look like? And had to dig pretty far in history to make that happen, because at first the original sense was if all the people of color left the earth today and just went somewhere else, and it's like, nah, it's too late for us. We take a lot of nonsense with us. So I was like back to I mean, it is what it is, you know. And I went back to the African emperor Mansa Musa, who was quite possibly the richest man who ever lived. During his lifetime, he was in Ethiopia. He sent a fleet to the New World, which historically, the historical consensus is the fleet never arrived. I personally think the fleet did arrive and became the Olmecs, but that's neither here nor there. That's just my belief. But in our story, due to a mechanism that is unrevealed as of yet, that fleet was transported to an alien planet. A habitable alien planet, kind of Bermuda Triangle to an alien planet. It has now been there another 2,000 years. So they've had 3,000 years in this environment, and it's a completely different culture with aliens and people that have, their own wants and needs. And that's the story we're telling.
Can you talk a little bit about what lead designer means for that project? How are you mechanics? I think Abria Iyengar. I'm going to say every name wrong tonight. I don't, just because.
You're going statistically speaking, you're going to crit eventually. Don't worry about it. You're going to make it.
I got a 5% chance each time. Look, I grew up in Florida and Texas. I am rolling at disadvantage every single time. Man.
I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm not supposed to know these words either. It's fine.
Can you talk a little bit what that lead designer role really translates into as far as involvement in a project?
It's just that everything kind of comes through me. Tanya DePass, as the creative director, kind of has her vision of where she'd like it to go, and then I help wrangle that into reality. And pretty much anything that someone else can't handle sort of rolls to me. I'm both the top and bottom of the funnel, essentially. Like, to give you an idea, just this last Saturday, we were working on the mechanics because we decided ultimately to go with our own system. I think we got something playable and good. But now I have to come up with the meta plot, the like what exactly is happening when the curtain lifts on this game. That it's not just a sandbox, something's happening. Why are we here? What's going on? Like, that's to me to figure out now. So on the one hand, I'm doing North of Cersei. Damn, Mr. Bible Pants, that is an accurate name, Mr. Bible Pants from Cersei, Arkansas. I know exactly what that means. Sorry. Just not only that, just north of Cersei. Holy crap! You're from somewhere smaller than Cersei is the map point. I don't know. I spent a lot of time. I mean, I grew up there, so I mean, I might know even the town you're from. But I digress. Sorry.
Don't worry.
No, wow. Yeah. So it's basically just quarterbacking the whole thing is what that means.
So are y'all no longer building off of the Cortex system, or
no, doing our own unique original system.
Okay.
Oh, that's cool.
Mhm.
Will it be?
Yeah,
oh,
sorry.
I was gonna ask, will it be one that's kind of like a standard system that can be maybe used for building other games, or y'all trying to make it that robust, or?
That is the hope, that it will be a universal system in its own right, but we got to make sure that it at least works right here first before, because I've had mixed success with universal systems. I don't want to name names or put anybody on blast, because I find when things are generic, oftentimes they feel too generic. I think it's one of the strengths of the storyteller system is it's about 70% the same, but then 30% different every time. That it's like, well, here's the bolt-on you need to play vampire, or the changes you need to make werewolf or mage. None of it is, here's this exact thing. So, but hopefully we're going to have the bones of something that can power all sorts of games. Yes.
That's really cool, man. I had no idea you guys were blowing it out to your own system and trying to do a universal deal with it. I think actually when you were on D20 Academy, I think you and Mercer talked about riffs within the two podcasts that I was listening to at the same time. I was like, man, I legitimately haven't heard anybody else talk about that game in decades. And B Dave and Mercer were talking about it the same week. That batshit insane system.
You had to be there. Yeah. It was riffs was a cautionary tale. Yeah, because every book, the premise was so dope, but every book that came out, the monsters and equipment and character options were literally twice as powerful as the book before. Every time.
It is power creep, the role-playing game. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Like, oh, look, you guys have just started putting times 10 after shit. Okay, cool. We'll roll with that. Yeah, it was a truly bonkers game. But guys on the panel, do you guys have any questions for B Dave? We've kind of run through kind of the most recent
I did have a real quick question with the Into the Motherlands. Do you mind going over who all else you're working with on that project?
Yeah, Tanya DePass, Gabe James, Daniel Kwan, Abria is on it, like you said. Eloy is in there with us. Eloy Lasanta. I know I'm forgetting somebody. Eugenio Vargas. And a ton of people on the creative side. That's mostly the mechanic side. With the creative side, everybody we drafted, I gave the same speech. I was like, create what 8-year-old you needed to see. You know, what is the game you wish you'd been able to play, and you know, the version of you or your culture or heritage you wish you could have seen represented, and let's make it happen. So that's what people are doing.
Dope.
Jamie, he called you out earlier. Surely you have a question prepped by now.
I do have a question. I was curious, like when designing a game like from scratch, like do you find it's more important to kind of like figure out what the story is first, or do you kind of come up with like the rules that you kind of want to build around, or is it kind of just a mix of both?
The most important thing is, what are you trying to simulate? Because that's what sets these systems apart from each other. D&D is basically still a tile-based war game, basically. I mean, it has grown in such a way that you kind of don't have to do that, but I mean, it's never completely gotten away from those roots.
Yeah.
World of Darkness storyteller system is exactly that. It is meant to drive narrative and meant to drive story. So much so, the combat is actually a little clunky at times, because it's not built to be a fighting game first. It's built to be kind of an everything skill checky game first, and then you can fight also. Whereas something like Outbreak Undead is trying to simulate real life, like real life. Like everybody thinks is like if a zombie came to that door right now, oh, I'd fling this cup at his head and I'd jump over to there to where my knives are and I'd grab both of them and I'd throw one and I hit it in the head. You know, I'm like, yeah, you think that. Okay. You sure? Because a lot of question marks in what you just said there. You know, and I mean, it's a game where, you know, you can break your leg and then your character's movement is halved for like 6 months of game time type thing. Like it's Outbreak is rough, but that's what it's trying to simulate. What would actually happen in an actual zombie apocalypse. These other games aren't trying to do that. So,
Right.
yeah. So I think that's really the first question. And the I mean, the story can inform that in the sense if you're like, it's a story about a zombie apocalypse, you know, but I mean, but also if you're like, I'm going to create a role-playing game simulating a cheerleading national championship, you still might want it to be fairly difficult because it is, you know, so that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but you know, and those mechanics definitely do inform the storytelling, the play from the PCs on the storytelling front as well. I mean, we see how paranoid D&D players are, and they get all their hit points back off a long rest. The level of paranoia, if they had to take a month to heal a broken leg, they wouldn't even ever go into the dungeons.
That is the most ridiculous thing about D&D, honestly, that you can get hit in the face with an axe. And as long as you got at least one hit point left, you're good. First of all, like no lingering repercussions. Second of all, I'm gonna sleep it off. Don't worry about it. This axe wound is gonna be good in the morning. And this is like,
I just need a good nap. Just a solid 8 hours.
Yeah.
Good. Maybe
just leave me. Just leave me right here. I'm good. You know,
it's like your brain's exposed, sir.
The axe is still
little,
in your
little song of rest.
Exactly.
Little song of rest, and you're all good.
It's like you are cut down to the white meat, but okay. Good luck. You can skip your shift tonight. We'll all keep watch.
It did used to be worse, man. Like we actually just covered that. It used to be like 1 hit point a day.
Oh yeah.
But then over the week you had to sub out your first day was a hit point a day minus your con penalty if you had a con penalty at the end of the week. So it you know, I think the video game nature of okay, just find a campfire and reset does encourage, I think, players to be a little bit more dynamic in the stuff that they'll do from session to session.
I'm like, back in my day, you were a wizard with 1d4 hit points and
right.
2 spells. You had to survive. You know, well, it is a couple. I mean, the game was far more adversarial. The game was the DM versus the players, and the dungeon master was actively trying to kill you, and you were actively trying to evade their machinations. And if you managed to make it to like level 10, I think it was even level 6, and so wherever you got fireball, that's when the turns tabled, and you were like, I am the destroyer of worlds at that point. Yeah, but it was a hard climb. It was a hard climb. Yeah.
Chat, have you guys got any questions for B Dave as we're coming up on an hour? Anybody got anything?
No. I'll make a comment though. Like I hadn't up until now hadn't heard about your documentary, and I think that's the idea is a very beautiful place to start in the sense of we tend to group people into others category and dehumanize them, and and that's what makes it easy to kind of hold some of the opinions and thoughts we have, and when you stop doing that, it becomes a lot harder to justify the way we treat people. Like once you get to a point where you could dehumanize somebody, then humans are capable of anything. And so I think pulling back from that and saying, hey, I don't care what he believes differently than you or how they walk differently than you, they're human. Start there. And it becomes that's where you get true movement in like how we treat each other and creating a better world. So salute to you on starting that conversation.
That is the hope, man. Somebody asked if Into the Motherlands, the setting was real world analogous, or they are human beings that began on Earth and now are on another planet. So they're humans, but in a different planet.
Jumping over to the chat, Mr. Bible Pants asks, "What do you want to see most in the D&D movie?"
Not Marlon Wayans.
Oh, okay, all right.
All right. We got to deal with this. We have to deal with this.
Let's back it up. Let's back it up for a moment, because Jazz, would you explain why that's a bit of a personal attack, if you would?
Okay. So I have a bit of a soft spot for that terrible 2000s D&D movie. I admit that it is a bad movie.
I'm losing my sound here. I don't. You're getting stabbed. The words are coming in the wrong order. Like I don't.
Basically, that movie, Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings came out, and I kind of got drew into fantasy, but didn't really see any, black people in it. And seeing Marlon Wayans in that role kind of helped open me up to the possibilities of me playing the game. And so because of that, I have a small attachment to that character Snails in that movie. And so when I hear everybody slander it, I just kind of I'm like, but it had a purpose. Like, I get it. It was a bad movie. But I guarantee you, I'm not the only person out there who enjoyed that movie at some point, even though it was bad, because I was like 12 or 13.
You were a 13-year-old casual. I forgive you.
Yeah.
It's just, he said, make whatever you needed 6-year-old you to see made. And your answer to that, Jazz, is a Marlon Wayans big budget blockbuster. I don't, man, that thing, I have tried to go back and watch clips of it.
It's
bad.
It's
I know
rough,
it, man.
It's terrible.
I have very minimal visibility into what it's going to be about, but I do have some visibility into story changes it is going to make into greater D&D.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. I'll say that. I'm cautiously optimistic.
So Wendell wins.
See, somebody just said it's the white chicks, but in Faerun, and you mean that as a positive. I feel like
Anthony's
you made
brother.
my point, not yours.
Let's be perfectly clear. That is Anthony's brother. I'm
just saying. I feel like that was my argument, not yours. That's all I'm saying.
The call is coming from inside the house.
Yes, exactly.
So, let's see. Secret Navarre from Secret Nerd Pod. We've done some collaborations with Navarre at Secret Nerd Pod, which if you're not listening to Secret Nerd Pod, get out there and listen to the Secret Nerd Podcast. He asks, how do you have more hours in the day than the rest of us?
Look, man, there's only one thing that every human being in this world is equal in, and that is time. We all got 168 hours in a week. We're not all the same size, we're not all the same smarts, not all the same bank accounts, but we all got 168 hours. There is time for everything if you manage it right. Maybe not in every day, maybe not in every week, but over the course of a couple of weeks, over a month, you can get anything done. And I know people get so mad because they're like, oh, all time's not the same. And I'm always like, okay, cool. Hey, how'd you like The Mandalorian? Oh, it was incredible. Did you see it all? Yeah, there's like 20 hours I just found for you right there. Like if something's important to you, you'll make the time. Yep.
It's Dreeken asks, what is your guilty pleasure movie then, if it's certainly not the Marlon Wayans D&D movie?
So here's the problem. People ask me this and they're like, what's your guilty pleasure? And I'm like, but I don't feel bad about it. But I will tell you my most controversial film position, I think, is that Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is my favorite Star Wars movie. It's not the best movie, my favorite movie. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Still not as bad as Jazz evangelizing for the D&D movie. So I'm glad we set a lower bar.
No.
But hey, I like the second of the new trilogy. I'm a big fan of
that is also the wrong answer. No.
I know that is a very unpopular opinion that like
The Last Jedi is a war crime. No.
Yeah,
it is a hate slasher flick to the Star Wars universe, which here's my issue with this. After Batman versus Superman, which I didn't hate, I didn't love, but I didn't hate.
Mm-hmm.
I watched an interview with Kathleen Snyder, and she said people don't want to see their heroes deconstructed. And that is absolutely right. I'm not interested in a world where Superman wakes up and is like, I got to save some people today. Okay. You know, like, no, I don't want that. The world is hard enough. So when you're like, hey, remember Star Wars? What if I sucked all the joy out of it, made it really stupid? Like that stupid 90-minute blockade chase. Why didn't they jump one Star Destroyer ahead half a light year and pincer them and blow them out of space? Like, ooh, we're just going to track them down slowly till they run out of fuel. What? That's so dumb. Never, why the whole casino planet? Why?
Yeah, given the casino planet is friggin' terrible, but we are talking about an organization that has refused to give its mainline troopers sights on their rifles for the last 60 years. So the greatest strategists they are not.
What I will say, I will give Rian Johnson this one concession, because I really enjoyed Knives Out. I don't know that anybody could have started with a trilogy that had no plan. That were like, here's where it started, and I don't even know where you got to get it, but good luck, do a thing. You know, like that would have been very different. And then, you know, the Rise of Skywalker, which I didn't hate, is the Cliff's Notes of 2 movies where JJ's like, F all y'all, I'm going to show you what I was going to do for the last movie and this movie, and I'm going to get it done in the same amount of time. So it's just like shot, you know, and it's going to.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the Force Awakens was, hey, remember Star Wars? Here's some more Star Wars. And then the Last Jedi.
It's a shot-for-shot remake of Star Wars movie.
And then they went, oh, people said it was too similar to the first one. Let's make one that is dedicated to saying, hey, okay, we're going to make things different now. And then when people came back and said, no, that was too different, they tried to Goldilocks it. And man, I'm sorry, Rise of Skywalker is not just right. It is. It's just, it's
the Last Jedi is the 4th edition of Star Wars.
All right. We're gonna walk slowly away from this.
It's one of the most nerdy insults.
I mean, look, I feel like I
was about to say, if you don't tweet that,
I'm tweeting it right now.
Let's see. Let's scroll back up and see what other questions we've got here. B. Dave. I mean, come on. Revenge of the Sith has got the worst no in cinematic history and manages to pull the worst no in cinematic history out of James Earl Jones. I mean, that alone kills the movie for me.
You're allowed to believe that.
Let's see. Mandalorian episodes are only 20 minutes. There's here it is right here. The one we're putting up from the screen. Thank you, Wendell. Thank you very much. No.
You know, I just appreciate that after all this time, that's the hot take. Like, that's the first that movie. That movie came out in 2008, and I'm like, that's what you got? Ooh, okay.
Hey, man, I love a good no, though. You know what I mean? Like,
that's as insightful and well-informed as randos typing cringe in chat when we're on the front page. I'm like, thanks, Todd. You know? Yeah. I will say the best Vader ever is the end of Rogue One, though. When he comes to him,
absolutely,
yes.
Yeah. Rogue One's excellent.
The second best Vader, though, is in Star Wars Rebels. When every time he shows up, it's like, run for your lives, he will kill us all type thing. Like, you're like, oh no, Darth Vader's here, we lost. Yeah,
Rebels is fantastic, and I definitely think Rogue One doesn't get the love it deserves, man. That is such a good movie.
Wait, people don't love Rogue One? Where does that happen at?
I don't know. People are people, man.
They don't like happiness and joy.
They have different opinions. We should go to oh shit, China really hates the idea of a black hero. Let's sideline him. I don't know what that was, Treekin. Oh, talking about the choices that The Force Awakens did. The Frankenstein scene has always felt weird to me. These are all just questions, guys. Not we sent
yes anding. We're improving.
We sent the chat down a weird Star Wars pipeline on our.
You started talking about nerd opinions. What did you think was going to happen?
True.
Oh, I know.
It is.
I know. And let's.
It is the Alpo to the hyenas of the.
Let's remember, it all spun out of Jazz liking the terrible D&D movie. So ultimately, this is all his fault when it comes down to it.
All right.
You know, you're allowed. That's all right. I get it. Okay.
I will not stand by this slander.
Yeah.
So much so, I want to actually ask Mr. Walters another question.
And somebody, wait, Mr. Bible Pants just said we're all stunned by B. Dave's well-informed, incorrect opinions. You're from the north of Cersei, sir. You are not allowed to besmirch me. I tried to defend you. How dare you? Okay, sorry.
Oh shoot. So if I'm not mistaken, you also wrote a D&D comic, correct?
Yeah,
the
I don't know
Dark
if they
and
can
Twitch.
see. Yeah, that's the one of the covers over there on my other screen. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering if you could go into kind of like your inspiration for that.
I will, but I want to tell you one thing first. Your brother asked if I like Star Trek better than Star Wars. The answer is I like Star Trek differently than Star Wars. I think the mistake that J.J. Abrams personally made is Star Trek is a bright, hopeful future centered on exploration. They live in a fundamentally good universe and they're having a good time, and they have problems and then they fix those problems and then they go back to having a good time. This is the best and brightest that all these species have to offer that are trying to struggle for something greater than themselves. Star Wars is dark and scummy and evil either won or is about to win again. Also, I hated the first season of Discovery for this exact reason, that it was so dark and bleak. I mean, it made Battlestar Galactica look cheerful. And I know lots of people have been like, well, it gets better. And I'm like, I mean, people whose opinion I trust tell me they find it eventually. But I'm like, yeah, but I was pretty beat down. As a Next Generation was my favorite, then Deep Space Nine would be number 2.
Yeah, even Deep Space Nine, which is definitely darker than Next Generation, takes time to go into Cisco's baseball rivalry with a Vulcan, and you know, has an ongoing baseball. So they keep those lighthearted elements all the way through it. So I haven't watched a ton of Discovery. I was never able to really kind of get into it.
I can believe it finds its footing, but I mean, the first season turned me off so much, and as I might have just ranted about, I don't have a super abundance of time to watch stuff that is kind of meh. So, yeah.
So I think the question, Jazz, was
inspiration for the comic. Believe it or not, it started as World of Warcraft fan fiction. It did.
Nice.
These kids were originally born in Northshire Valley, you know. Yep. And when the opportunity came to do this, I kind of already had a story in my head about these kind of legendary heroes that have to come out of retirement to save the world one last time. So when Tess called me with the opportunity, I had her sold on the story in the first call. So actually, I'm gonna take a step back further than that. I'd gotten tapped to write a comic book adaptation of a novel somebody had written. See, it's infectious.
Spreading.
Somebody, it's true. My Arkansas is coming out. That was not very good, but it kind of was like this legal thriller type thing, and he wanted to make a comic book out of it. So I hit up some artists that I Twitter knew. I hit up Tess. She read it. She's like, this is dope, but it's not my thing. Like, if it turns out at the end the guy's secretly a werewolf, let me know, but otherwise this isn't my style. And I was like, cool, don't worry about it. Then a little while later, she hit me up and she was like, hey, I'm doing a D&D comic for IDW, but I need a writer. Are you in? And I was like, yeah, this is what I want the story to be about. And again, these characters had already been living in my head. 2 of them got created for the comic. I won't tell you which 2 they are, because hopefully they all seem organic. But so she's like, yeah, let's do it. I'm going to go pitch it to IDW. And I knew I'd self-published Electropunk already, but I didn't have any comic credits. So I was like, IDW is probably going to be 50-50. So I did what any self-respecting Ventru would do, and I cheated. I knew everybody over at WotC, so I went to them and I was like, yo, let's do this comic, and I'll do a stream tie-in and we'll make it a whole transmedia thing. Just tell IDW you guys want me to do it. And they were like, K. And that's how I got the book. Yeah, that's how it happened.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about Electropunk a little bit. That was your long-running web comic that I think again ended. I said back in 2017 that you last published.
Because we crowdfunded and we have all these projects that must deliver. So that's issue 2 of Electropunk just went out to backers about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, awesome.
So it's we're doing the graphic novel that is broken into 6 slices, and the first one is up for free all over the interwebs. If you go to my Twitter and just look for @BDaveWalters and Electropunk issue 1, you can go see the first. You can get the first one for free. We just put the second one that is out to the backers. We have I know this is going to be a shock, a very small team. So we kind of have been doing this non-linearly, but the book is actually about 75% finished, even though the first 2 issues have only been the ones that have come out yet.
What's the targeted length? Is it 6 issue, 12 issue? What's the 6
graphic novel, big chunky baby.
Cool.
Although it's probably going to end up being like 130 pages, I think, which is my fault, but I regret nothing. So yeah.
So will there be a way eventually to buy physical copies of this directly from like stores or no?
Oh yeah. I mean, right now people can late back the Kickstarter because we got Backer Kit or whatever. Both the documentary and the graphic novel are both linked at the top of my Twitter, which is @BDaveWalters. So you can see both of them. The hope is once the book is done and we get it out to the backers, then we're going to look for a publisher to get it out in stores.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just recently got into physical copies on comics with the newest release of Static Shock, and so wanting to kind of start a collection.
The Dungeons and Dragons: The Dark and Wish, you can get them at Barnes and Noble. The graphic novel is available at most Barnes and Noble. You can get it straight from IDW. You can probably get it on Amazon. It's just that was a collection of the 5 issues of that one. Very proud of that book. Yeah. Also, walking into Barnes and Noble and seeing something I wrote on shelves never gets old.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. The I guess I've always been surprised that there hasn't been a longer running D&D comic presence, and I don't know if that's because of the ebb and flow of the popularity of it, but when you go and you look at the D&D comics that have been out there, Transformers G.I. Joe had 80, 90, 100 plus comic runs on it, and with D&D it's 5, 6, 10, 16, 20. There's not that big long stretching run with it, or really I think with a lot of fantasy comics in general, you see some of the smaller independent publishers like Mouse Guard and things of that nature. And I would think it's a genre that would particularly work well with comics. It's just always kind of surprised me that fantasy hasn't had a bigger presence on that side of it.
Yeah, DC had a long-running D&D comic for a while, and Jim Zub's written quite a few for IDW with Minsk and Boo, so it's out there.
Oh yeah. Minsk and Boo. So that's we're actually fixing to start doing a Baldur's Gate 2 stream with a couple of the cast members, and so they'll be meeting Minsk and Boo for the first time very, very, very soon.
Go for the eyes.
You weren't considered a nerd for liking G.I. Joe or Transformer comics. D&D comics probably had a stigma behind it early on from Wendell. Cool. Guys, you got any other questions for B. Dave? Panel?
Do
So
you have like a favorite?
No.
Do you have a favorite media to write for? Like, do you prefer writing for comic books or for like actual gameplay or just doing DM stuff? Like, is there
or your screen?
So I'm unusual in that I write for film, television, comics, and do novels and do TV. And have been published in all of these mediums, which is not a lot of people get to do that. So I'm very happy about and proud that I get to. I think the thing I like most is probably screenwriting. Although I'm feeling the itch to do another novel soon, because the main difference between those two is screenplay is there's just a spectrum of how much detail you can include. A screenplay is like a blueprint. You have to say the absolute minimum to get your point across, because that is going to get filtered through the director, the producers, the talent, and everybody, and they're going to make the end result in the movie. Whereas a comic book, you have to include absolutely every detail, because if you don't write it in the comic script, it will not be on the page. But then a novel, you can do whatever you want. you can spend 20 pages describing how a strawberry tasted. I mean, you probably shouldn't, but you could. You know, you have infinite cinematics, infinite points of view. You know, infinite. If you want to get into the minutia of what it feels like when a dagger enters into someone's chest and scrapes off their rib, you know, you can do that in a way that these other mediums can't. So, but I think if I had to pick one, screenwriting.
Yeah, that's actually the holdup on the next Game of Thrones novel, is that Martin has been in this weird papaya description wormhole for the last year and a half that he cannot pull out of for some reason.
Friends,
Dude, man.
friends who have followed my work know George R.R. Martin is dead to me for reasons that I will not rehash right now. But no, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I am a Game of Thrones boycotter. Like finish your series. We'll talk about anything else until then. I started reading Wheel of Time in high school, right when the second or third book I think came out, and learned my lesson there.
I put the odds of the sixth book charitably at 50-50. I don't think he's going to do it, but it could be a coin toss. The seventh book will never come out. It will be written posthumously by someone else.
Oh, absolutely.
He will
100%.
never finish the seventh book. Yeah.
The and look, I understand the creative process is difficult, but he doesn't have, I think, a whole lot of motivation to grind that out right now with all his other projects going on. And
that's the problem. It's all the other projects. That's the, well, never mind. You know what? I said I wasn't going to lament it. Fine. But somebody said, do I write for television? Yes. There's a series called Salvage Marines, which we shot that has not come out yet, that I'm actually in with Casper Van Dien. I wrote for Salvage Marines. So, yep.
Yeah, I went and checked, and we'll guys, if you're in the Discord, we will post the trailers. Because I actually pulled some of that stuff up off your IMDb and kind of digging around with it. That's through a production company that Casper Van Dien has done a ton of stuff with, and I thought, I was like, are you the guy in the horned armor? I was like, is that B. Dave's voice behind the horned armor guy?
It is I. Yep.
Aha! I got that one right. I feel pretty good about that. What staffing? What is? I think
he's asking, are they staffing?
Oh, it's already done. That was in the can, unfortunately. Yep.
And then it looked like you guys had there was another pilot that you were involved with that had. Oh God damn it! I'm drawing a total blank now. Somebody rescue me from this. Oh my God, Satine Phoenix. A project with Satine Phoenix about a game shop. It's you, Satine Phoenix. I think it's called Game Shop. SHOPPE. Did that pilot ever get produced or?
It has not. I think the plague times kind of put the kibosh on that one.
Yeah, it looked. It looked very, very Clerksy, except with comic book gaming store vibes.
That was expressly the intent, is what they were after there. Yep.
So you also do D&D in a castle, which is exactly what it says on the box, D&D in a castle. And do you do other destinations? I could have sworn at some point I saw somebody talk about how you were going and doing some of the D&D cruises too. Is D&D in a castle?
I was going to do D3 at sea. Unfortunately, well, I was about to say, I don't know if this has been made public, but I guess I'll tell you now because I told them, unfortunately, I'm not going to make D3 at sea. But as of now, still hoping to be at the castle. I have 2 dates in March, but, again, that's we're living in plague times. So,
breaking news, folks. You heard it here first. B Dave canceled. We've broken it that we are getting our press passes.
It's true.
That is exactly what
I hope that they didn't have like some plan to tell the people like some other way.
I'm sure they're not watching this. Don't worry. I think you're in the clear.
I sent that message some time ago. Sorry if you were coming to the boat and this is the first you heard of it. Sorry.
Well, look, if you're getting on a boat right now, you get what you get, and it's probably COVID. So, wow. I think I do think it's cool that there is this growth of kind of D&D destination travel stuff. I know Satine Phoenix has got her thing that she's doing, D&D in a castle. I desperately want to do as soon as I convince myself that getting on a plane won't kill me. That's something that I just hope continues to kind of grow in the future along those lines, possibly domestically, so that I can just, go walk down the street and do it. Cause I don't want to do mass transit right now.
Understandably so. It's a rough time. I've flown to a couple of things post Delta but pre Omicron, and it's weird. Like we get tested every week to go into the studio for G4, and it never gets any less nerve-wracking every time. You're like, no whammy, no whammy, no whammy, no whammy, and then light comes on, you're like, get to work again this week.
And if there's not a phrase that is more inherently dystopian, is post Delta pre Omicron. That very much sounds like post the Delta quadrants invasion, and then Omicron Persei 6 moved in right after.
True. Men are from Omicron Persei 7. Women are from Omicron Persei 9.
Gang, we're coming up on time. Does anybody have anything else they want to hit with B Dave before we thank him generously for his time and start wrapping it up with closing questions? Chat, I'm looking at you. Wendell, never mind, kind of hard to type with any clarity with a 5-year-old hovering. I think you need to address the fact that your 5-year-old can fly first. That is that
he is the
something.
chosen one. He will bring balance to the force.
Damn flying babies.
My nephew might. He might. That might happen.
So you can only levitate. Yeah. It's way to slow pitch it. What Cora Bay Nikki asked. Hang on, let me get back up to Cora Bay Nikki's. BDW, do you have a work you're most proud of we should check out, or a book series you highly recommend? Thanks, Dreeken.
Believe it or not, there's actually 2 answers to that question, because the story I'm most proud of, believe it or not, was a Wraith 4-shot I did on Q Times, Wraith the Oblivion, which the cast was just magnificently awful to each other. Because if you don't know, with Wraith, you play 2 characters, so you are a ghost that has some unfinished business, is why you haven't crossed over to the afterlife. And you have something called the shadow, and the shadow is you. It's not your evil twin, it's you. It's every mistake you ever made, everything you're not proud of, everything you don't like about yourself is the shadow. So when you're playing at the table, you play 2 characters. You have your character and someone else's shadow. And the things they said and did to each other as the shadows over the run of that show, I was just like, yo, like there's so many times I had to just avert my eyes with just how just savage they all were. But I think in terms of things that I've just done, a Darkened Wish is absolutely my love letter to D&D, and what we're doing right now with Invitation to Party, really trying to push this whole medium into its next phase of evolution. I take very seriously that if whatever I can accomplish here is not just something for me, it's something for everybody. Like I'm trying to fight for the users like Tron. So, yeah.
Well, there's no better reference to close out than on a Tron reference, in my opinion. So, Mr. Walters, thank you so much for joining us. We absolutely appreciate your time. Chat, thank you for participating and being supportive and keeping me on point, Dreeken. Really, I do appreciate it. We're obviously a small show. We've been doing this for about a year. The streaming stuff we've been kind of building up more over time. And man, you're in the heart of the D&D streaming scene, and with official streams, and good Lord, you're the televised DM. You making time to pop up on our little show and talk trash about, a perfectly respectable Star Wars movie while advocating for a
That's weird.
lesser
That part
known
must have gotten edited out of our conversation. I don't remember that happening.
Hidden gem, I guess, in the prequels. I'm sorry, I did raise my children Orthodox Star Wars. We appreciate you making the time and making them making yourself available for us. You and Stashwick and Cobb have really made this a fantastic January for us, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate closing out our first month. So diplomatic, Turner. That originally what I was going to school for was diplomacy, but then the Soviet Union fell apart and all the good bribes went away. So anyway,
good news, it's reforming.
Hey, that's right.
This time.
That's right. 2024. So on that note, gang, we're going to wrap up the stream. We absolutely appreciate it. And as always, hope you enjoyed the show.